And experts have looked at, you see, because we have them in the tabernacles, and they've given special, the Vatican at times have given special permission to look at, you see, the piece of flesh that's there that would assume to be flesh. And they do. They get a blood type on it, and they've recognized that it's heart muscle. And almost all of these Eucharistic miracles are heart muscle, a piece of flesh from a ventricle of the heart. And this kind of solidifies what we knew to be one of the most central devotions, that of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And so the Eucharist is the heart of Jesus made present for us. Is, you see, his humanity. And through his humanity, we're able to be divinized. That my humanity gets sanctified with his humanity. That my heart, which beats for selfishness and beats at whims, you see, of other people's desires, and sometimes is even subject to the winds of hell, is but transformed. And like an external pacer, when you got those in the hospital, they put some leads on you, and they put that external pacer, and they start to, you see, make you, like a pitch pipe, make you beat at this rate that's externally induced. And so the same thing happens to us when I receive Jesus, the pacemaker Christ. His heart starts to form my heart, and my rhythm starts to mimic his rhythm, to the point where as we progress, then my heart becomes his heart, and there's a union of hearts. And then to be loved by me would be to be loved by Jesus. When you met Mother Teresa, you were meeting Jesus. When you were loved by Mother Teresa, and if you met as you were loved by Jesus. And you knew what it was to be loved by God in the flesh. That's the idea. You see, the church is the communion of human persons with the thrice holy God. And we have that communion through the heart of Jesus. So this devotion, the humanity of Jesus, is where this has its theological underpinnings. Then at the time in the Middle Ages, like the 11th century, for example, 12th century, when you had St. Francis of Assisi, and you had the Crusades, and you had St. Bernard of Clairvaux and the Cistercians, and religious orders like Dominicans and Franciscans, and these Reformed Benedictines, the Cistercians, they had a great devotion to the Passion of Christ. So when you read St. Bernard of Clairvaux, for example, and especially his commentary on the Canticle of Canticles, the Song of Songs, you hear him speak about the heart, the love in the heart of Jesus. And then Francis of Assisi and the Franciscan, the great love and devotion to the wounds. Now we know that St. Francis in history, if you take St. Paul out of the question, but if St. Francis is the first person we know in recorded church history to bear the stigmata, the 5 wounds of Christ, the wounds in the hands, the wounds in the feet, and the wound in the side. And so perhaps because of the seraphic, you see, Saint Francis, who received the stigmata late in his life, the Franciscans certainly had a devotion to the 5 wounds of Christ. And of course we have that in our Holy Hour books and in our devotion to the Sacred Heart, the devotion to the wounds. So this was very common in the church from about the 1200s on. And the preeminent wound in the body of Christ was the wound in the side. It was the wound of that lance, post-mortem, that didn't cause any hurt to Jesus in his physical body, as his soul had already, you see, left his body, and which is the definition of death. And so it didn't wound his heart, you see, by way of any feeling in his humanity, but it hurt Mary's heart. We'll reflect on that tomorrow. And so Mary stood there. I remember one time doing hospice work. The caretakers come in, to remove the body, and the wife is there, and they're moving and putting his body on the stretcher. And the wife, be careful, treat him gently. You see, don't be so rough. How many times I heard that? Many times. Or a child or something. But a concern. Concern. No, that Henri is not experiencing any physical pain anymore from this body that's in front of us. You see, but the dignity of the body, and to treat it with respect. And you can be sure that Mary at the foot of the cross felt the pain. As we say, the mystical, a sword shall pierce your own heart. And it pierced Jesus' heart. But the pain went to Mary's. Okay? And so this wound that was in the side of Christ, and blood and water pouring out, symbol of the baptism, our baptism, symbol of the Eucharist. Even St. Faustina, and recently, in the last 100 years, with the Divine Mercy vocation and devotion, this is very close to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. This is a continued, development and complementarity of St. Margaret Mary's devotion to the Sacred Heart, the Church's devotion in the Divine Mercy. And the rays of light coming from the side of Christ, his resurrected body. You see, with his wounds. The wounds are in heaven. That the Son of God has a body. The Trinity has a human nature in it now, eternally. It wasn't a uniform that was put on to do a mechanic's job and taken off, like when I go anoint. You see a COVID positive patient at the hospital, and I'm putting the two masks and the face mask and the gowns, you see, and the gloves, 2 pairs of gloves, and my little booties and stuff. And I go in there and I anoint the person. I've done that many times. And then what do? They say, hey, don't be coming over here to the nursing station. No, go back over there. They tell me, go back. See that big red 55-gallon drum? You say, well, it's a garbage can. They got big red. Take all that stuff off and put it in there. You see, and then you come over here. And so, that's not how Jesus redeemed the world. Jesus didn't put on a humanity like a mechanic suit or like some PPE, you see, and then put it in the garbage can. He took on a humanity and he kept his humanity. And in his glorified body he has wounds. And those wounds are life-giving. And from his side, Faustina saw, you see, these rays of light and that depiction of the Divine Mercy. And so this was seen as a summation of the wounds. And so this is a very important precursor to the Sacred Heart devotion as we know it. And then, of course, as it goes on, I think St. Lutgard. St. Lutgard was a Cistercian nun. Lived about the same time as Francis. Same time as this with the 5 wounds. And the story about St. Lutgard, she was a sister. And everything is in Latin. Okay, all the Psalms, the Divine Office in Latin. And she didn't know Latin. So she enjoyed praying and everything else, but she didn't know what she was saying, and she didn't know what she was hearing. We're no different. A lot of us, we like Latin, but as you start going with it pretty quickly, it's hard to follow. So what did she do? So Jesus appeared to her and says, Lutgard, my daughter, you please me very much. And so ask whatever you will, and I will give it to you. So what did she ask for? I really like to know Latin. Are you kidding me? Come on, Lutgard. Are you kidding me? Latin? Yeah. She said, I really like to have a knowledge of Latin so that I could know what's going on. We pray all day long in Latin and Mass in Latin and the Psalms and the antiphons. Lord, give me a knowledge of Latin so I can praise you and glorify you better. So, he gave her knowledge of Latin, all right? So she was flooded with Latin. I mean, she understood all the antiphons and everything else, and reading the Bible and stuff. She memorized it and stuff. But she had a tremendous knowledge of Latin, infused by God. But it left her very empty. And nothing against Latinists. I love Latin, and I'm a big fan of Latin. But anyway, it left her rather empty, all right? So she went back to the Lord and said, look, I want to give my gift back. Could you take it back? He said, well, what would you? Or maybe I could exchange it for something else. You go I go to Home Depot and I bring the thing back, and they said, well, we can't give any money, but we'll give you a coupon. We'll give you a coupon for something else. So if you want to find something else for $49, then we'll go ahead and we'll count it toward the coupon or whatever. So St. Lutgard got like a coupon. The Lord said, well, what would you exchange it for? She says, for your heart. Now we're cooking with hot grease, huh? For your heart. And then the story that Jesus, you see, put his hand into her chest and pulled her heart out. And he put his hand in his heart and pulled his heart and put it in her bosom, and he put her heart in his bosom. That was like the mystical. This was very, very strong in the early devotion to the Sacred Heart, mysticism. Those who were devoted to the heart of Jesus were mystics. Those who were devoted to the heart of Jesus were saintly people. They were very, very close to God. Somebody like St. Paul who says, let nobody mock me. I bear the wounds of Christ, stigmata, the wounds of Christ in my body. I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live my own life. Nay, rather Christ lives in me. in Galatians. This is mysticism. This is sanctity. This is closeness to God. So the Sacred Heart devotion has that power to make us mystics. All right, and then St. Margaret Mary. St. Margaret Mary, this is around the time of St. John Eudes, who was a big proponent of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. We got the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Really, St. John Eudes was a big defender of that and big proponent of that. And yet he also spoke about the heart of Jesus. And it was through that time, I guess about maybe 1670, we had the first Feast of the Sacred Heart, even before St. Margaret Mary got her apparitions from Jesus. So already there was a devotion, you see, and a feast day, not universal, but a feast day in the church, 1670. 1672, just a couple of years later, for about 2 or 3 years, this humble nun of the Visitation convent at Paray-Monial in France started having apparitions of Jesus, revealing his heart to her, and revealing with fire, you see, coming from his heart, and saying that he wanted his devotion to the heart of Jesus spread throughout the world, and how cold the love of people were to his great warm love for them, how great his love for them. And so he started to reveal. He revealed promises that devotion to the Sacred Heart, that he would promise to people should they render glory to his heart and should they promote the devotion. And so you had a number of visions of St. Margaret Mary. Incidentally, Margaret Mary was canonized by Pope Pius the Ninth, I guess, or beatified by Pius the Ninth. And St. Pius the Ninth, Pope Pius the Ninth, who consecrated the world to St. Joseph. So we're in a year of Joseph, thanks to Pope Pius the Ninth, around 1870, because of you do the math. 2020 would have been the year, so we're in this year of Joseph, concluding it with our diocese soon, and yet prolonged because of the universal year of St. Joseph, the 150th anniversary. But Pope Pius the Ninth, his uncle was a chaplain to the Visitation convent in Rome, and as a young boy he'd go serve the masses. And that chapel of the Visitation nuns was the Casa Santa Maria. So Father and I were studying in Rome, and I was at the Casa myself for about a year during my doctorate, which is the North American College original college. And now it's a house for graduate priests that have done further studies live at the Casa Santa Maria. But it was a Visitation convent, and then after Napoleon sacked it and took up residence, it became it was a Dominican in Visitation, and then it was given to the Americans by Pope Pius IX as our first college in Rome. But Pope Pius IX was a little kid serving masses at that Visitation convent. And then when he became ordained, he became the Pope. And back in those days, the popes lived right there next door, up there on the hill, which is now it's like the White House for the Italian government. The president of the Republic of Italy lives right there. That's the office. Well, anyway, it's just a stone's throw. So when he decided to beatify St. Margaret Mary, the Pope walked over from the Vatican, from his residence, walked over to the convent, into our chapel, and into the choir, and announced to the sisters first that he was going to make Margaret Mary, who was a Visitation nun, a saint. And there's a little anecdote. So we have a little placard in the chapel. Pope Pius IX visited this in 1870, whatever, where he, or before 1860, whatever, before he gave the thing to the college to announce that. So this is Margaret Mary became Margaret Mary Alacoque, the great promoter, along with her spirituality Colombière, of the devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And then we see in Leo the 13th. Around right after Pope Pius IX, because she became beatified. Then Pope Leo the 13th made a universal feast for the church. Then we got Pius XII, 1950s, who wrote his great landmark encyclical Auriatus Aquis, You Will Draw Water, where he says that the Sacred Heart devotion, on the Sacred Heart devotion, he says, God loved us with a human heart. And the Catechism quotes from that. God has loved each of us with a human heart. And so the love of God is made manifest in a pulsating, beating heart, and he loved us in a human fashion, each of us. He thought about us and he loved us. So this is the devotion. This is kind of the trajectory. And so, of course, churches like this, you see, built with the title of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Now, the heart of Jesus, he loved us with the human heart. When I first was ordained, after I came back from studies, I was sent by Bishop O'Donnell to the old Hamilton Hospital as chaplain. And it was a CIS hospital, Cardiovascular Institute of the South or whatever. And so they did a lot of heart surgeries. They would do probably 10 or 12 heart catheterizations every day and 2 or 3 bypasses. So they did a lot of surgery. Small hospital, but they did a lot of heart work. It was kind of a heart hospital. We have a heart hospital now that just does heart-associated work. But this was in the 90s. So I was chaplain there. And so I was, my office was next to an orthopedic doctor that I knew very well. And he was all into, you see, the physical death of Jesus, the JAMA, the Journal for American Medical Association, this kind of high-octane journal for physicians, on the most cutting methods in medicine. That scholarly journal featured an article about the physical death of Jesus. So some doctors looked at trying to look at the evidence about how, from the scriptures and all, about how Jesus died and how he was crucified. Okay, and so he was all into that, and of course I had read the article and I used that with great efficacy for prayer as well as for preaching. And he says, look, he said, Father Champagne, I really want you to come with me into surgery. And he was an orthopedic doctor. He said, I got to do a carpal tunnel on Tuesday. Why don't you come? Because we talked about that, for example, the shroud has, the nails in the wrist. And of course, the Hebrew for the hands, they have pierced my hands and my feet. That word hands could be, you see, from your watch on up. So, it's kind of interesting that the stigmata comes in the palms of the hand, our traditional crucifixes. But we do have some crucifixes that have been made after the Shroud of Turin, and we see it through kind of the wrist. And doctors say, well, 190, 200-pound, Jesus couldn't hang limp if you put a nail through the palms, because there's no crossbones that would lodge and hook that nail to hold the body. And so they believe it's here because you've got that carpal tunnel and you got this big old bone across your hand that you could hook it and you could hang a lot of weight on. Je ne sais pas. I don't know. I'm just telling you what they say. However, so he says, look, he says, come to sir, I want to show you. You know how they talk about that nail going through that medial nerve or whatever that goes as a tunnel. So there's like a little sheath of a bone. And that nerve comes right through, about a quarter-inch, 3/16 nerve goes right through that tunnel, and then it breaks off, and you got your hand, and you got your fingers, and all, a lot of feeling in your hand. Of course, the nerves. Okay. What happens is I've been playing tennis or whatever, or I've been I've been a plumber and I've been twisting things my whole life, or I'm a piano player, I've been playing piano, whatever. A typist, I've been typing my whole life, or texting. No, I don't guess texting is the same thing. But anyway, what happens is calcification of that tunnel, and that nerve is going through, so you're getting a little corrosion, and it's like your hood cable, in your car. You pull the lever on your hood, like my hood. I got to go over there with a vice grip pliers, and you see, because the cable is getting stuck in the sheath, and so that's what happens to us on the calcification. And what happens is that cable is nerves, and so it causes a lot of pain. Middle of the night, we're in pain and everything else. So what they do is they go in there and they slice that tunnel. They got a little hoop stress, and it pops open, and it relieves the stress, and then the bone will heal itself. And so the diameter, instead of being like 5/16, it might be, maybe 3/8 or something. All right, so it pops open and it heals itself, and then no more problems. So anyway, I went in one of these churches. I had to scrub down and with my good suit, and I got in there, and he was showing me, and it's pretty amazing. He takes a little razor blade, like not quite a razor blade, but anyway, they cut it, and then he starts slicing and slicing and slicing and slicing, slicing. He says it's cutting through that tunnel, and which is in stress. And you got to be careful. You don't want to cut that nerve, you see. And all of a sudden, poof, you see that thing opens up, and it leaves a gap. and it relieves, you see, where that nerve can slide in and out of that tunnel, you see, easily. And he was saying, if the shroud is correct, that nail would have went right through that median nerve, which would have caused excruciating, that's where we get the word excruciating, from ex-crucis, out of the cross, from the cross. That's kind of, when we talk about pain, if it's excruciating, it means it's like pain from the cross. It's like Jesus' pain. That's what we're saying. You see, that's where the word comes from the cross. But that pain, because like fire, sending fire from the toes all the way to the top of our head constantly. And anytime Jesus would want to say a word, he'd have to do a pull-up and lift himself up, you see, and catch a breath to be able to say, Father, forgive them. Or, this day you will be with me in paradise. Or, woman, behold your son, behold your mother. He would have to pull himself up on these nails, which would cause unspoken of pain throughout the body. That's how much he loved us. So that was very enlightening for me, very beautiful thing. So we finished the surgery. I was praying, man. I was involved as he was. I was praying. So we finished the surgery, and so I'm walking down with Dr. Dewey, and to the emergency room. Well, there's an operating room for heart surgery, and Dr. Ali was in there. Dr. David Ali, who used to be he was a pitcher. He was a very like Bruce started. He was a pitcher. He had a career in the baseball, and he left that, went to school, became a cardiologist. He was a renowned heart surgeon. So Dr. Ali had just was in a surgery. So he said, "Hey, y'all come over." So anyway, I go in there and they open it up. Well, it looks like a shop when we used to work on engines. If you ever been in one of those things, you may have been in there, you just weren't awake. You say, "Well, I was awake." So they have like a rack. They had like an A-frame, like when you pull an engine out the hood. You know what these things would come along. So they had like an A-frame, and it's all, of course, stainless steel, all sanitized and all. But they had cut the sternum. And they use like a sawzall. I mean, it's like, it's not, they had this big bone which protects the heart. I mean, so the heart is tucked in there pretty good. It's hard to get to it. And so they had to cut the sternum. So they and they cut. Then they got some clips with some cables, and they opened the chest cavity. So they have these like spring tension, things up to this A-frame holding the chest cavity open. When I got in there, I saw this. He was explaining this to me. And then the heart, there's a pericardium. There's a little sac that the heart's in. Kind of like, I don't know. It's like vacuum packed, if you will. So there's like a little sheath around it. And they take that, they cut that pericardial open. And the heart's laying. It's all connected. And that heart's beating. And so he had the heart in his hand. In his left hand, and he's holding his heart, kind of like the images of the Sacred Heart Jesus. Jesus is holding his heart in his hand, kind of like what he did to St. Lutgard, after she gave Latin back, he got the heart, you see. And so, Doctor had the heart in his hand, and I kid you not, that heart's the size like of a grapefruit, and it was beating in his hand. And he said they hadn't put him on heart-lung bypass. They'll put him on bypass, and then they'll cut the veins, you see, and then graft, and they'll make a little bypass on you, stitch that up. But he hadn't done that yet. He had just got to that point. So he showed me the heart. And he said, this is what a heart looks like within 24 hours of a major heart attack. He said, you see all this is bruised? This is enlarged. The heart is about twice the size it should be. And all this black and blue here, part of that heart muscle was starved of oxygen in the heart attack. And so he said, some of that's going to recover, some of it won't. But he said, this is what it looks like. And he said, my kids go to Academy of the Sacred Heart. And one of my little girls came back the other day and says, Daddy, what does God look like? He said, I don't know. You said, I haven't seen God. Yeah, but you've seen God. No, baby, I haven't seen God. Well, they told us at school you did. What you mean they tell you at school? She said, well, they said God is in the heart. And you're a heart doctor. You see hearts every day. You see God every day. What does he look like, Daddy? He said, she's right. I do see God every day. And of course, he marveled at the intricacy of what, you see, God's allowing him to manipulate that he didn't create. You see? And yet what I took from that was how the heart was enlarged, bruised, broken, crushed from that heart attack. In Mark's gospel, Jesus cried a loud cry and then breathed his last. You remember that? So in John's gospel, Jesus says, I thirst. You see? It's finished. And then he expiratus, he breathed his last. Mark's gospel just said he uttered a loud cry. Doesn't tell us what that cry was. New studies on the Shroud of Turin go a bit against this article that got me into the operating room from these doctors about the physical death of Jesus. They argued that Jesus died of asphyxiation, that he starved of oxygen. You see? The new studies on the shroud say that if this shroud is authentic, that the shroud shows that whoever this man was, from a very scientific fashion, that he died of a broken heart, that his heart blew up, that his heart exploded, that the heart became large and pressurized in that pericardial. They says that the imagery of the shroud shows they haven't seen anything like this except for car accidents of people who don't wear seatbelts. When the body is being ejected across the dashboard, the sternum, this big piece of shield that protects what's most sacred and most vital in ourselves, the heart, hits the steering column and gets crushed, and it causes the heart to get mashed. And it says that looks like the heart of Jesus. And it's very, very close to that wound in his side. When they ran that sword through the heart of Jesus, probably burst in the pericardial, and blood and water pressurized, you see, drowns, you see, the Roman centurion, causing his conversion. Saint Longius. We don't know his name. We call him Saint Sword. Saint Big Sword. That's what his name is. Like Saint Big Sword. You see, because it pierced his heart and blood and water flowed out. See, that's the heart of Jesus. That's what mercy, all this divine mercy, this is Sacred Heart, is just the next step of it. Misericordia. St. Thomas says that mercy means a broken heart. That he loved us all with a human heart. That's devotion to the Sacred Heart. That's, you see, that God so loved the world that he took on a heart like mine, like yours. And he felt what we feel. He was tempted in every way like us, except he didn't sin. And he loved us to the end, to the point that he died of love on the cross. That's the death of love. Jesus' heart bursting for us, longing to do more, and did as much as humanly could be done with a human heart, a human body. And so we ask the heart of Jesus to make our heart like his own. We pray that we can learn of him and become meek and humble of heart like the heart of Jesus. That we could know his love to the point that whether we learn Latin or not, we would have a heart transplant. That this heart, cold and hard, you see, and occluded, you see, with calcium deposits from boudin, hog's cheese, or whatever else the gratons have been eaten, you see, I get a new heart. The heart of Christ.